Every relationship you have ever had, romantic, platonic, with your children, with your parents, with your colleagues, has been shaped by something that happened before you turned 3 years old. Most people will never understand this. They will spend decades repeating the same relationship patterns, wondering why intimacy feels so complicated, why they always end up in the same situations with the same kinds of people, why love feels either suffocating or just out of reach. They will call it bad luck. They will call it personality. They will never trace it back to where it actually started. What they are living with is an attachment style, and it was built brick by brick, interaction by interaction, in the first years of their life, by the people who cared for them. This is not a fringe theory. The science of attachment is one of the most thoroughly studied areas in all of developmental psychology. John Bowlby first described it in the 1960s. Mary Ainsworth tested it in her landmark strange situation studies. And in the 6 decades since, hundreds of researchers across dozens of countries have built on that foundation. Tracking children from infancy into adulthood, documenting what attachment patterns predict and how they unfold. The conclusion is consistent. The way a caregiver responds to a young child, consistently or inconsistently, warmly or coldly, attentively or dismissively, creates a template, an internal working model, a blueprint for what relationships are and how they work. That blueprint does not stay in childhood. It follows the child into every relationship they will ever have. There are 4 attachment patterns that developmental researchers have identified. Today we are going to walk through all 4, what each one looks like in childhood, how each one forms, where each one leads in adult life, and what parents can do right now, regardless of which pattern their child might be developing. Because here is the critical thing. None of these patterns are fixed. The brain is plastic. Relationships are reparable. And the fact that you are watching a video like this one is already evidence that you are the kind of parent who can change a trajectory. Let's start with the one that every parent is trying to build, and then we'll get into the 3 that can form when things go wrong. Not because parents are bad people, but because nobody taught them this. Secure attachment is what happens when a young child learns, through repeated experience, that the world is basically safe and that the people they love will be there when they need them. This does not require perfect parenting. Research is explicit on this point. Secure attachment is not built by never making mistakes. It is built by being responsive enough, often enough, and by repairing when you miss the mark. What does secure attachment look like? The securely attached child explores freely when their caregiver is present, because they have what researchers call a safe base. They get distressed when the caregiver leaves. They are not indifferent, but they recover relatively quickly when the caregiver returns. They seek comfort when hurt and accept it when offered. In social situations, they tend to be confident, cooperative, and resilient. They believe at a deep neurological level that relationships are reliable and that they are worthy of love. In adulthood, securely attached people tend to be comfortable with intimacy without being dependent on it. They can articulate their needs. They handle conflict without either shutting down or escalating. They believe, somewhere underneath it all, that they are fundamentally lovable. Longitudinal studies that follow the same people for decades, show that children rated as securely attached in infancy are more likely to have stable, satisfying relationships in adulthood, better mental health outcomes, stronger careers, and even better physical health. The effects of a secure early attachment are not subtle. They are measurable across an entire life. So how is it built? The research points to a quality that developmental scientists call sensitive responsiveness. It means noticing what your child is communicating and responding to it in a way that is roughly consistent with what they need. Not every time, no caregiver achieves that, but more often than not. When your baby cries and you come. When your toddler falls and you comfort. When your child is scared and you stay. When you lose your patience and snap, and then you go back and repair. The repair is not optional. Studies show that children whose caregivers consistently repair ruptures in the relationship develop just as secure an attachment as children who rarely experience ruptures at all. Because what the brain is learning is not, this relationship is perfect. It is learning when something goes wrong in this relationship, it gets better. That is the foundation of trust. The second attachment pattern is called anxious attachment, and it forms when a child's experience of their caregiver is inconsistent, not absent, not cold, but unpredictable. Sometimes the caregiver is warm and attentive. Sometimes they are distracted or overwhelmed or emotionally unavailable for reasons that have nothing to do with the child. The child cannot figure out the pattern. They cannot predict when their caregiver will be present and when they will not. The developing brain responds to unpredictability with a very logical strategy: amplify. If you are not sure whether your needs will be met, the safest thing to do is make those needs impossible to ignore. So the anxiously attached child becomes more clingy, more distressed, more difficult to soothe. They cry harder. They protest louder. They cling tighter. Not because they are manipulative or spoiled, but because their nervous system has learned that moderate bids for connection are not reliable enough. You have to turn up the volume. In Mary Ainsworth's Strange Situation Studies, anxiously attached children were dramatically distressed when their caregiver left, far more so than securely attached children. But the striking finding was what happened when the caregiver returned. These children could not be soothed. They would reach for the caregiver, then push them away. They would want to be held and then resist it. Their nervous systems were stuck in a state of alarm that the caregiver's return could not resolve, because the child had no reliable internal model that said, "This person is trustworthy now." In adulthood, anxious attachment tends to show up as preoccupation with relationships, fear of abandonment, difficulty being alone, a tendency to interpret ambiguous signals as rejection. People with anxious attachment styles often describe their relationships as a source of anxiety as much as comfort. They over-communicate their needs and simultaneously worry that their needs are too much. They find it difficult to trust that they are loved unless that love is constantly being demonstrated. Studies consistently link anxious attachment in childhood to higher rates of anxiety and depression in adulthood, to relationship instability, and to what researchers call hyperactivated attachment behavior, the adult version of turning up the volume. The third pattern is avoidant attachment, and it is in many ways the mirror image of anxious. Avoidant attachment forms when a child learns, through repeated experience, that expressing needs does not lead to comfort, and may in fact lead to withdrawal, criticism, or emotional unavailability. The caregiver is not absent, but they are emotionally distant. They are uncomfortable with distress, including their own. They tend to respond to their child's emotional bids with redirection, minimization, or gentle but consistent pulling away. The child's brain, again, does the only logical thing: it adapts. If expressing needs doesn't work, the safest strategy is to suppress them. The avoidantly attached child learns to appear self-sufficient. They stop reaching out. In the strange situation, they seem almost indifferent when their caregiver leaves, and equally indifferent when they return. To an outside observer, they can look like remarkably independent, easygoing children. But researchers who measured their physiological stress responses found something startling. Their cortisol levels were just as elevated as the anxiously attached children. They were not calm. They had simply learned to disconnect their external behavior from their internal state. This is the most important insight about avoidant attachment. The need does not go away. It goes underground, and it stays there, informing behavior in ways the person themselves often cannot explain. In adulthood, avoidant attachment shows up as discomfort with intimacy, a tendency to value independence above connection, difficulty asking for help, and a pattern of pulling away precisely when a relationship becomes close. People with avoidant attachment styles often report not needing much from others and genuinely believe it. What the research shows is that their attachment system has not been deactivated. It has been suppressed at significant psychological cost. My daily family's most viral video, the one that reached more than 200,000 people, was about avoidant attachment. Not because the topic is obscure, but because it is everywhere. It is arguably the most common and least recognized pattern in Western culture, because we so often mistake the suppression of need for strength. The fourth pattern is called disorganized attachment, and it is the most complex and the most painful to understand. It forms in situations where the very person the child needs for safety is also a source of fear, through abuse, severe trauma, extreme neglect, or the kind of chaotic, frightening unpredictability that leaves a child with no coherent strategy for managing their distress. The child's brain faces an impossible paradox. The person I need to run to for comfort is the person I am afraid of. There is no solution to this paradox. Disorganized attachment in childhood is associated with the highest rates of long-term psychological difficulties, including severe anxiety, depression, personality disorders, and difficulty with emotional regulation. It requires professional support, not just better parenting techniques. If you recognize elements of this pattern in your child's history, please seek the guidance of a trauma-informed therapist. There is real help available, and the brain's capacity for healing, given the right support, is remarkable. So what does all of this mean for you right now as a parent? If you recognize your child in the anxious pattern, the most important thing you can do is work on your own predictability. Not perfection, predictability. Your child's nervous system is trying to read you. The more consistent your response is, the more their alarm system can begin to quiet. That means showing up in roughly the same way across contexts. The same warmth after a bad day at work as after a good one. The same follow-through, the same repair after ruptures. You are not trying to eliminate all of your child's distress. You are trying to become reliably readable. If you recognize your child in the avoidant pattern, the work is different. It is about creating space for emotional expression without overwhelming. It means resisting the impulse to redirect when your child is upset, and instead saying, "I can see that was hard." It means tolerating your own discomfort with your child's emotions long enough to stay in the room with them. It means noticing and naming feelings even when your child seems unbothered. You are not trying to make them more emotional. You are trying to gently signal that their emotions are welcome here. And if you find yourself in one of the insecure patterns in your own history, if you recognize yourself in the anxious or avoidant descriptions, that is not a reason for shame. It is a reason for compassion and for the understanding that you are parenting out of a blueprint that was handed to you before you had any say in the matter. The parents who do the most damage are almost always the ones who were most damaged themselves and never had the opportunity to understand it. The fact that you are here doing exactly this kind of reflection already breaks the cycle. Because that is the most important finding in all of this research. Attachment patterns are not destiny. Therapists call this earned security. Adults who did not have secure attachment in childhood, but who, through their own relationships, therapy, or conscious self-work, develop the internal resources that secure attachment typically provides. And, crucially, researchers like Mary Main and Eric Hesse have found that what predicts a parent's ability to raise a securely attached child is not the parent's own childhood attachment history. It is whether the parent has made sense of that history, whether they have processed it, understood it, integrated it. You can break a pattern that has been in your family for generations, not by being perfect, but by being willing to look clearly. That is where it starts. And that is exactly what you are doing right now. If this has been useful, I want to hear from you in the comments. Which of the 4 styles felt most familiar? Whether in your child, in yourself, or in your own childhood. And if you want to go deeper, the next video in this series will walk through the specific daily practices that build secure attachment at every age. Subscribe so you don't miss it.